Good day, everyone, and welcome back to Cat Tales. I'm Kathi Palmer, and behind the cameras running everything, so it works out all right, is Ken Stomsky. I have an interesting story to share with you today, and the reason I say that this is so interesting is because it actually takes place in Westfield, Massachusetts. So I think it's kind of fun. You're going to recognize the picture behind me, and we'll talk about that when I'm done. The chapter I'm going to read is from a book called Deborah Remembers, written by Lillian Vanderveer Albrecht. Now, she was in the children's library back in the 1950s. Her book is available. It's called Deborah Remembers, and it is available for you boys and girls at the library. They also have copies of it in your schools in their library. And the chapter I'm going to read is Idle Gossip. Now, a little bit of a history lesson here very quickly. The American Revolution that started in 1775 to 1783, actually a lot of the action took place not far from here. One of the most important battles was the Battle of Saratoga. When the Battle of Saratoga ended, some of the prisoners from the British and the Hessian armies were actually marched right through the city of Westfield. They came from New York, over Blandford Mountain. They came down what you know of as Western Avenue and down Main Street. Now, the Hessians were from a section of what we now call Germany. It wasn't Germany back in those days, but they were armies that were actually hired by the British to fight for the British. And they had a hat that was very, very, very tall. So it made them look very big, and there were many, many rumors going about that the Hessians would eat children, they would eat animals, they were very vicious, they were very frightening. And so rumors were rife in the city of Westfield about what would happen when the Hessian prisoners were brought through the village of Westfield. And this is one of their stories, and it's called Idle Gossip. The children were talking together. "'Tis said the Hessians are 8 feet tall," said Rebecca. Mercy Ann sat with her basket of apples on her lap, and she said, "That's monstrous tall," she gasped. "And there isn't a Hessian that has teeth like us. They have teeth like an animal," she said. "Do you believe that?" said Mercy Ann. "Of course I do," answered Rebecca. "You ask Abner and Daniel when they come home." And day by day, the stories grew wilder, and the children became more and more frightened. At last, news reached Westfield that the first prisoners were coming from Blandford. It was October 27th, 1777. Little Solomon Ashley told Mercy Ann the news. "They're stopping in Blandford tonight," he explained, "so they're sure to be here tomorrow. Mercy Ann, do you think those Hessians are really 7 feet tall?" "Well," said Mercy Ann, "Rebecca Dewey told her brother James that those Hessians are 8 feet tall." "That's worse," said Solomon. "And do you suppose it's true that the Hessians eat dolls and children?" "Oh, no," said Mercy Ann, clutching her doll. "That mustn't be true." "But I did hear that they have teeth like animals." "Oh, yes," said Solomon. "And Captain Mosley's hired help, Nero, said that they eat cats and dogs, too." "Do you suppose they'll eat little maids and lads?" asked Mercy Ann. "Well," said Solomon, "my father said 'tis nonsense. And Jedediah Taylor, who just came back from York Stake fighting, why, he laughed and he said it was a monstrous lie. But still, I heard people say 'tis true." "Oh, I'm glad we don't have any babies in our house," said Mercy Ann. "Well, anyway, I need to get home before dark, said Solomon, and he hurried off across the pasture. After he disappeared, Mercy Ann ran back into the house where she found her little black and white kitten mewing for food. Oh, poor Sixpence, she said as she picked up the kitten. We'll go into the barn and we'll get you some milk. At the shed door, she found her father carrying in a basket full of apples. Has Plato milked the cows yet? She asked. Oh, I just sent him in, answered Father. The dark came early, and it's getting rather cold out. Feels like snow coming, he said. It was indeed getting dark early, and Mercy Ann was glad to be inside the shelter of the barn. The dim light pierced the dark corners of the barn and sent some very strange shadows. Plato was in there milking the cows. Could I have some milk for my kitten? She asked. Hessians are coming, muttered Plato. Yes, sir. Them Hessians are coming. Oh, I'm not afraid of them, said Mercy Ann. I'm not afraid of the Hessians. You better be, he said. You just wait and see. They ain't got one set of teeth like you and me. No siree. They got two sets of teeth, top and bottom. Oh, no, Plato, that can't be true. Yes, sir, it is. I heard it from Captain Mosley's help himself. Yes, sir. They got one set to bite you with and another set to claws you with. Oh, no, said Mercy Ann, and she held on to her kitten. Hessians won't eat my kitten. I don't believe they will. You don't think so, huh? Said Plato. You just see when they get here. Why, them Hessians would eat that kitten in one bite. They shan't, said Mercy Ann, and she snatched up her doll under one arm, and then she snatched up the kitten in the other, and off they went. Mother, mother, she cried. Mother, 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 the Hessians won't eat us, will they? They won't eat my doll, and they won't eat my kitten. Oh, Lordy's sake, said her mother, what on earth have you been listening to? She's afraid the Hessians are going to catch her, said my older brother Amos, and they think they're going to eat her. Plato said so, said Mercy. Oh, that's just sheer nonsense, said her mother. Nothing but idle gossip. Sheer nonsense, said the grandmother. There's nothing but gossip. Well, but Plato said so, said Mercy. I heard that Captain Sackett told Mr. Matter, and Mr. Matter told Mr. Bancroft, and Mr. Bancroft told Chloe, and Chloe told Mosley, and I don't care, said her mother, if Deacon Sackett said it himself. All these tales are nothing but empty stories. Why, those German boys are nothing but poor, homesick boys far away from their own land. Now let's not hear any more of this foolish gossip. Come and help me set the dinner table. The whole family was up early the next morning. It was blustery cold, and rain and sleet and snow pelted down. The road was a mass of half-frozen mud. All morning, as she hurried around doing her chores, Mercy Ann kept looking out the window to see if the Hessian prisoners were coming down the road. Said her father, those prisoners won't get far today. It's much too cold for such a journey. Poor souls, said the grandmother. It's such a hard trip over that mountain. Dr. Mather says that some of them are going to be stopping here in Westfield because they can't get any further. They were supposed to push on to West Springfield. They're wiser to stop here for the night, at least some of them. But you best keep the children inside, Mother. Soldiers are a rough lot, be they redcoats or Hessians. Won't we be able to see them? Said Mercy Ann's big sister, Polly. Oh, we'll see them all right, said the mother. Perhaps we'll lay a fire in the front room, and then you girls and Grandma can sit in the front room knitting and watching out the windows for the Hessians when they walk by. That's a fine idea, said Grandma. Come, girls, let's make a short work of the dinner things, and then we can hurry on to the front room, and we'll watch. 'Tisn't every day we get to see foreigners walking down the road in Westfield. Mercy Ann had just settled herself in a ladder-back chair in the front room when her brother Amos came running through. They're coming! They're coming! They're on the way! The Hessians are coming right down the road! And down the road came a very strange parade of men. The village boys were running along the sides of the road, shouting, calling to each other. But in the middle of the muddy, cold, sloshy highway stumbled a stream of tired men, half frozen to death with snow and ice clinging to their blue garments. The poor souls, said Grandma. They look weary enough, said Polly. Just then, Father appeared at the door. I'm going to go stand down by the pasture gates to watch, he said. Would you little maids like to come and stand with me and watch them? Oh, no, said Polly. It's much too cold and wet outside. I shall stay here. Oh, I would like to go, said Mercy Ann. May I go, Grandma? Well, of course, child, said the grandmother. But stay close to your father. Do not wander off. But you don't suppose they're going to eat me, she said. Foolish child, said Mother. Of course not. How many times do I have to tell you not to listen to the idle gossip? Oh, said the grandmother, watching the parade of men walking by. But those poor men, they looked so hungry that they probably could eat anything. Mercy Ann wrapped her shawl tightly around her, and she followed behind her father as they went out by the pasture gates. And what a sight the men were walking by. Along the edge of the road, near the soldiers, straggled dirty, weary-looking women. Some of them carried little babies wrapped in blankets and younger children. And in amongst the men, shabbily dressed, were dirty little children. It was cold and it was wet by the elm tree by the fence, but Mercy Ann stood there watching the prisoners file by on their way towards West Springfield. Suddenly, Amos came running from the back pasture. Father, he said, some of the Germans are camping out behind the orchard. They're building a fire and they're starting to tear down the fence for wood. Oh, that won't do, said Father. They're welcome to all of the wood that we have, but they can't use the fencing. I best go by myself. Perhaps I can let some of them spend the night in the old barn over there. Father started down the lane, and then he turned back to Mercy Ann, and he said, now you stay here by the fence, Mercy Ann. I'll be back in no time. And so Mercy Ann was alone by herself under the elm tree. She watched the men drag slowly through the mud, and after a few moments, some large wagons rumbled by, and behind the larger wagons came a smaller wagon, a strange little wagon with a linen top. And when it reached the elm tree where she stood, the wagon stopped. Mercy Ann could see that it was a woman driving the wagon. She was wrapped in a heavy shawl and she had a mob cap on her head. Was she a witch? Tell me, said the woman. Tell me, little maid, where is the Landlord Fowler Tavern? Mercy Ann never said a word. Her heart was beating heavily under her shawl. Oh, come now, little maid. I will not bite you, you see? The lady in the carriage smiled, and Mercy Ann took 2 steps. Ach, nein, said the woman. See here, I have my own girls in the wagon. Mercy Ann took 3 more slow steps in the muddy road, and she could see that there were 2 little children sitting in the wagon. Suddenly, one of them said, Wie has Puppchen? Mercy Ann ran back to the shelter of the elm tree. Ach, Gustava, she said, you have frightened the little girl. See, she does not understand your German. We must speak in English." Then turning back to Mercy Ann, she said, "My daughter does not mean to frighten you, little girl. She only asks, what is the name of your doll? You will tell her, yes? No?" But still Mercy Ann did not answer. "Ach, we have frightened the little maid," cried the woman. She handed the reins to her daughter and climbed down from the wagon. Mercy Ann backed up against the fence. "Sie Liebchen, I do not mean to terrify you. I know I look like an evil old woman in these shabby clothes that I am wearing. I look like a wicked stepmother in the fairy tales, but ach, I am not. We have had so many troubles. First there was that terrible, terrible battle, and I had to nurse all the wounded soldiers. And then I had to come over the mountains, such high mountains, and it was so cold, and the snow so thick. And now my babies and I are cold and tired and hungry. I know we look like evil creatures from an evil fairy tale, but we do not mean to frighten you, mankind." And slowly, Mercy Ann took 2 small steps from the shelter of the fence. And the German woman smiled at her. The smile lighted up her tired face. It was a smile that banished even Mercy Ann's fears. Stepping boldly onto the road, she held her doll up towards the Hessian woman, and she said, "This is Deborah, my doll." "Ach," said the woman as she climbed down from her carriage. "It is a pretty name. And what is the name of your little girl?" "I am Mercy Ann. What are your daughters' names?" "I am Gustava," said the older girl in the carriage, but the smaller girl hid. "Ach, foolish one," said the woman. "That is my Frederica. She is only 3 and she is very shy, so you will excuse her bad manners. We are looking for shelter for the night. Could you tell me where we might find Fowler Tavern's tavern?" It's just down the road a piece," said Mercy Ann. You look behind those trees and you can see the chimney." "Ach, you are so kind," said the woman, "and your doll is so sweet. I have a doll baby of my own." And the woman went back to her carriage. She drew back the linen cover, and Mercy Ann climbed up on the wheel, and she could see a little baby fast asleep inside the wagon. "That is my Carolina," she said. "She is only 2, so we must hurry into town and put her to bed. We are all weary, and we are hungry. And yes," said the woman, "we are also very frightened, for we are in a very strange land and all by ourselves." Mercy Ann climbed down, and then she lifted her doll up to the carriage, and she said, "Here, you may take Deborah. She could spend the night in the tavern. She'll be good company for your daughters." "That is such kindness," said the woman. "But in the morning you shall come and get her. Now we go." That night in the big bedroom in the Fowler Tavern, Deborah the doll was tucked into the trundle bed between Gustava and Frederica. The children were soon sound asleep. And how sad it was that this kind lady and her German children should be so far away from home. The things that war did to people. The children's father came in to kiss the little girls good night. His eyes had been full of tears when he tucked the blankets around them, and his shoulders drooped when he carried the candle out of the room. The people in the tavern were astir early the next morning, and after a hasty breakfast, the little Hessian family bundled themselves back into their blankets and shawls and got ready to leave. Gustava held the doll close in her arms when they went through the front door, and there were Mercy Ann and her father standing out in the yard to see the soldiers leave. Gustava ran across the yard and put Deborah back in Mercy Ann's arms. "Danke," she said, and smiled, and then climbed back in her wagon. "I also say danke," said the German lady. "Danke und auf Wiedersehen." "Goodbye," said Mercy Ann, as the wagon rolled down the muddy road. Just as it reached the bridge, the two small fair-haired children leaned out behind the wagon and said, "Auf Wiedersehen." Mercy Ann stood watching them while the weary Hessian soldiers dragged past on their way to Springfield. She wasn't afraid anymore. The Hessians were just tired soldiers like Jedediah Taylor and Silas Fowler. After a long time, Father and Mercy Ann headed home. "Who is that lady?" she asked her father as they went back to the home. "I heard that it was the Hessian general's lady," answered her father. The Hessian general was Rietzel, and that was Madame Rietzel. "She's monstrous sweet," said Mercy Ann. "And Father, that is not true that the Hessians will eat children." "Of course not, silly child. That was nothing other than rumors. Your mother warned you not to listen to idle gossip." Now, in that story, you'll notice they talk about Landlord Fowler's Tavern. Landlord Fowler's Tavern, if you look at the picture, is still very much on Main Street. If you go down Main Street, past where you know that Dunkin' Donuts is, and you go towards the Westfield shops, you will see Fowler Tavern on your right. It is still there. It was built, we're not sure, probably sometime about 1750. Now, interestingly, the door on the building was taken off and is actually in the early American wing in the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. Madame Rietzel was indeed a real person. Her husband was a well-known German Hessian general, and Madame Rietzel had a wonderful talent for keeping a journal, and she very painstakingly wrote down her doings from the Battle of Saratoga and her journeys and what she did. She has some very interesting stories, and you can actually read her journal. She mentioned Westfield in the journal itself, and she said that she was very impressed by what a beautiful village Westfield really was when they went through it. So if you want more information, by all means, you can Google, of course, the American Revolution, but you can also go to the Westfield Athenaeum and ask for Lily Albrecht's books. She wrote several other books about the history of Westfield. She wrote a book called Hannah's Hessians, and she wrote another one about, I think it's Sarah's Candlesticks. I'm not sure of the title. I would have to look that up. Forgive me for not knowing. But go to the Athenaeum, ask for her books, go upstairs to the museum, and you can actually see one of the dolls that were made from Deborah Remembers. And again, the book is available at your Athenaeum. And thank you for listening.